These retrospective musings on pre-ego and prenatal memory bubbled up in 1945 in a Himalayan hermitage. It wanted to be, and so emerged, writing itself through us. Some copies were sent to friends who all were aware that the terms Emmanuel, Wuji, and I pertain to one and the same persona mask, or individual uniqueness in the individuum. Now, 35 years later, a friend has taken the trouble to type it and so made it readable for ego-Gs. Ego-G is a term of endearment that Sunyata used to point to all the egos playing about in the world. Unfortunately, some pages were missing at the very beginning of the manuscript, and so Sri Emmanuel, who is now commonly known as Sunyata, 90 years young and dwelling in California, has been asked by himself to remember and rewrite a beginning to this beginningless memory. Emmanuel Sorensen took body and birth, this time in Denmark. The year was 1890, on a small and rather isolated farm. He had a very quiet and solitary childhood that was harmoniously and congenially related both to nature and to his fellow humans. It was so simple and unconditioned that the first 7 years are remembered as pre-ego consciousness. Ego and mind were no trouble, as there were no impositions, no training, no discipline, and no sin complex. But there was consciousness, and even a certain unconscious awareness of wholeness, unity, and living harmonies, which he later on came to call memory. A true memory that has nothing to do with the recollection, remembrance of thought, event, or occurrence. Socrates had used this same term, memory, to refer to the recollection of a light of awareness possessed before birth. Similarly, Mencius, the Chinese sage who lived a century after Socrates, saw the purpose of education as remembering one's original heart. Wise it is not to dissipate and blur this true memory in things such as word symbols, or by trying to tell, express, or explain it to others. When one understands, there is never any craving to prove or assert, or any fluttering to gain understanding or love. Sunyata used the word understanding as a comprehension without words, without thought or effort, intuitively, as a non-mental understanding. At 7 years of body age, school and ego-Gs happened upon Emmanuel, and in duality play, he felt at first a breach or a loss of something real, but only for a brief while. Soon also, duality and ego fuss were accepted in joyous ease. Ego consciousness and pre-ego consciousness could be coexisting and unclashing, and still are, although now they are sometimes overshadowed by post-ego consciousness. Wu. Sunyata would use the primal Zen koan, Wu, as an inquiry. What is emptiness? A way to point to the gateless gate or the thought-free awareness. Wu means both yes and no simultaneously. both a negation and an affirmation that cancels each other out, leaving only the self, one's true nature. In 1904, our farm was sold to strangers. Until then, there was still harmonious solitude on the farm. This solitude was a beatitude of the first 14 years of Emmanuel's lifespan, which established the rhythm for a life harmonious with true recollection of what is beyond natal birth. Awareness. This simple peasant escaped what he calls education, mental conditioning, impositions, ambition, and the curse of desiring property. Education never happened to come upon him, and he neither craved nor reached out for it. He also had no need for external guru guidance, a father confessor, or even for intimate friends in whom he could confide. From the beginning, he understood. The source and I are one. Sunyata often talks as in through the third person because there's no personal self left. He uses we or us, indicating no personal sense of I or ego identification with body-mind. There were 4 years of apprenticeship in agriculture in Denmark, and then in 1911 he went to England. For 19 years, Emmanuel lived in England, earning his livelihood as a simple gardener, frugally and with poor but sufficient wages, all in glad contentment and joyous ease, happy and harm-free, in conscious and unconscious grace awareness. At Dartington Hall in Devonshire, the Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore befriended the simple gardener and suggested that he come to India to teach silence. This casual invitation brought Emmanuel to the ancient land of Bharat in 1930, and there he lived happily at joyous ease for the next 48 years. His main residence was a Himalayan cave-like hut, but he would visit friends in the plains during the cool seasons. He was befriended by Bapuji Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru family, as well as Anandamayi Ma, and by saints and sages galore, Mahatmas and self-realized fellow pilgrims living in eternity. Ramana Maharshi discerned in Emmanuel one of the rare-born mystics and gave his initiation with these words: "We are always aware, Sunyata." In 1973, Yankee guys and girlies invaded the Himalayan Turiya sanctuary, and one of them peremptorily shouted, "You shall be in California next year." Emmanuel protested, "But we have nothing to teach and nothing to sell," he told them. And he was told, "That is why we want you." So it happened in due time, according to our prarabdha karma, we let ourselves be kidnapped to the far west by the almost almighty Bhagwan Sri Dollar, whom we fortunately can happily ignore, still at joyous ease in Swa-lila, the divine play, happy and harm-free. More than merely happy, anandaful, in bliss and grace awareness. Woo!